This footage was filmed in central Russia just days ago. No, Ukraine didn't do this. Someone just attacked the heart of the Russian war machine. And, to be honest, this person is much more dangerous to Putin than you think. It's someone he can't bomb, who can't be hit by missiles, because this enemy is inside Russia itself. Look, the invasion of Ukraine is not going well for Russia, and that's obvious from the simple fact that the war is still going on. Putin thought he would solve everything in a few days, but he didn't. Ukraine resisted bravely and weakened Russia. Let's go, let's go, let's go! Ukraine. Ukraine. But until now, at least, Putin could console himself with one thing. The enemy was outside Russia's borders. Now, that's no longer the case. The truth is, Putin has a much bigger problem ahead of him. There are guerrilla fighters inside Russia itself, and they are very active. Let me show you what happened. I'll explain to you better what this group is in a moment. But what's important now is to understand this. This legion hates Putin's regime so much that they're willing to fight alongside Ukraine to remove him from power. And that's exactly what they did. In early November, on the 6th, news outlets began reporting a wave of attacks across all of Russia, all targeting Russian locomotives. You see, Russia's railways are like the veins of the country. That's how everything moves. And the locomotives are the heart pumping it all. And now, dozens of them were burning. Why? Because they were trains transporting weapons and ammunition from Russia to Ukraine. The Freedom of Russia Legion confirmed the attacks. And here's where it gets interesting. Ukrainian intelligence, called Main Directorate of Intelligence, also confirmed it. And when Ukrainian intelligence makes a public statement like this, it means they're working together with these guerrillas, probably helping to choose the right targets, the targets that will cause the most damage to the Russian war machine. AHUR explained everything that happened. In a post on Telegram, they published this message. The Russian freedom resistance movement successfully attacked the enemy's logistical infrastructure. And here comes the most impressive part. They didn't use missiles. They didn't use complex weapons. Do you know what they used? Flammable liquids and matches, that's right. Molotov cocktails. It's that simple. Molotov cocktails destroyed the control and power systems of dozens of trains carrying military cargo. Think about it. This means two important things. First, these guys got really close to the trains. They managed to access the vehicles. So, either there are people from the Legion working inside the Russian railways themselves, or the trains that Putin uses to keep the war going are completely unprotected. Anyone can get close. Second, it's clear that the HUR is in direct contact with these Russian guerrillas. In recent months, Ukraine has attacked several targets inside Russia, most of them focused on refineries and energy. Now they're expanding the game. With the help of these guerrillas, they're hitting the trains themselves, which carry oil and equipment all across Russia and to the front lines. And here's another important point. This was coordinated, not improvised. Ukraine knew it was going to happen long before Putin found out his trains were burning. But look at what the Freedom of Russia Legion itself said. They also went on Telegram and posted a very direct message. They were proud of what they did, and they sent a clear message saying, "While there are people sitting on the couch doing nothing, we're here taking action and reaching a new level. We destroyed dozens of locomotives carrying weapons, ammunition, and equipment to the front. What is clear is that there are many people in Russia against Putin, and these people are willing to risk their own lives to support Ukraine. They ended the publication with a direct warning to Putin, saying, "The resistance of the Legion is growing and spreading throughout the country. Putin's group will live in fear and will forget what security means." Do you realize what happened here? They're saying there's no safe place in Russia, and Putin can't do anything about it. Because he doesn't know who these people are, he doesn't know where they're operating from. They're invisible, nameless, faceless, but they're rising up against their leader. And they're doing this by supporting Ukraine's strategy to destroy Russia from the inside out. Now, the Kremlin has a huge problem on its hands. Normally, Russia, well, would deny everything, act like nothing happened, or say that the locomotives were scheduled to be destroyed anyway. But it can't do that this time, because it was all filmed. The 1-minute video shows that ordinary people committed this sabotage. The first few seconds are filmed by the guerrillas themselves. They show flammable liquids being poured inside the trains. Then we see the result. Train after train catching fire, gasoline being ignited, Molotov cocktails flying. And the most shocking thing is that each train seems to be completely unprotected, vulnerable. This is a massive security failure for a country that relies so much on railways to function. It almost seems like it was too easy, but it probably wasn't. Most likely, HUR and the Legion spent weeks, maybe months, studying, choosing the specific trains they knew they could access and that were used by Russia to transport weapons and ammunition. The video switches so quickly between one act of sabotage and another that it's hard to count how many trains were hit during the night. But there are detailed reports from every place where the Legion attacked. And this shows that it was a large-scale operation, spread throughout all of Russia. The list is very large. They carried out attacks in the regions of Moscow, Samara, Sverdlovsk, the Komi Republic, and Kemerovo, and there's more. Guerrilla groups carried out identical attacks in the occupied regions of Donetsk and Kherson in Ukraine. This shows that this network is able to operate on both sides of the front line, attacking the Russian war machine from Siberia all the way to its final destination in Ukraine. At first, it seems like it's just a one-off attack to weaken Russian logistics. But the truth is that these attacks are devastating for Russia, and Putin must be furious about it. Because Russia is not just dependent on the railways, it is a hostage to them. Let me explain. Russia's railway network spans 122,000 kilometers and carries 90% of the country's cargo. 90%. Think about that. The Russian army is completely dependent on this network to move troops and equipment. Absolutely. Without it, war doesn't happen. Putin put all his eggs in the railway basket, and the Freedom of Russia Legion just broke several of those eggs. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize. As extensive as the Russian railway network is, it's extremely vulnerable to sabotage. Remember when I said it seems strange that no one stopped the saboteurs from doing their job? And look, there are two reasons for that. The first is the lack of staff, and the second is the enormous size of the country and, consequently, the railway network. Let's face it, Russia is huge. That has always been the country's greatest asset. But now it's become one of its biggest weaknesses. In the past, when countries tried to invade Russia by land, they had to cross millions of square kilometers. It was impossible. But today, with airstrikes and internal sabotage, all that size has become a problem. Russia can't defend its own skies, and it also can't defend 122,000 kilometers of railway tracks. That's a lot of kilometers to protect, even more so for a country that has already lost more than 1,140,000 people in Ukraine. That has hundreds of thousands fighting there, and that is seeing its population decrease rapidly. Gaps in the defense are appearing, and Ukraine is taking advantage of these gaps through groups like the Freedom of Russia Legion. But there's something even more critical here, something that makes these attacks absolutely devastating. Russia is not just fighting against saboteurs. It's fighting against a system that is already collapsing. Because the guerrillas didn't attack a healthy giant, they attacked a terminally ill one. Since the end of 2023, Russia has been dealing with a lack of locomotives and reduced transport capacity, all due to Western sanctions. The West has restricted what Russian companies can buy from abroad. That means parts and components for maintenance and repair are in short supply. Russian railways have been dealing with this problem for about 2 years, and repair times have skyrocketed. The company operates about 20,000 trains through 2 companies. Lokotech takes care of 3/4 of the trains, and STM Service handles the rest. And both companies have reported difficulties in obtaining specialized lubricants, bearings, and electronic components, all because of the sanctions. And the lack of workers, due to the mobilization for the war, made everything worse. So, Russia's largest railway companies were already struggling with the sanctions and the lack of workers. And now, having the trains burned will make a bad situation even worse. Independent media outlets have shown the real scale of the problems with Russian railways. There is severe dysfunction within the system. In the first 12 months of the invasion, rail transport of several important categories of goods collapsed, all because of the sanctions. Total freight transport fell by 4% in 2022. It stabilized in 2023, but it dropped another 4% in 2024, and it seems to be falling again in 2025. In July, Russia's rail shipments had fallen for 20 consecutive months, causing chaos in domestic and wartime operations. And there's also the crew problem. A lot of crew problems. By mid-2025, Russian railways were short 3,000 locomotive crews and 2,500 engineers. That leaves about 200 trains stopped, unable to operate. The company still has plenty of rail cars, hundreds of thousands of them. 300,000 of those rail cars sit idle and unused on the network. And even more could be left idle now that the Legion has destroyed so many of the locomotives that pull those rail cars. As you can see, Russia's railway network is in trouble. To have any chance of recovering, it needs a lot of investment. More locomotives, more workers, better infrastructure. And this need only increases when groups like the Freedom Legion are destroying exactly what Russia needs most. On top of all that, Putin is now forced to deal with a war inside his own country. The Freedom Legion of Russia is among the most active anti-Putin groups inside Russia. But it's not the only one. Far from it. Putin has dealt with rebellions before. In 2023, Wagner mercenaries rebelled against Moscow and took over the Rostov region. They were going to march on Moscow before the rebellion was crushed. That was one of the biggest signs that dissatisfaction with Putin was growing during the war. Now, the rebels of the Freedom of Russia Legion are underground, fighting in the shadows. And they are not alone. They are joined by the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Siberian Battalion, and ATESH. But these are just the groups that are actively fighting. How many more people in the country are against Putin and against the invasion? That's a question that Putin may never be able to answer accurately. And you know what's worse? Look, the Kremlin is well prepared to face a centralized enemy. When the Wagner mercenaries marched into Rostov, Putin knew what to do. He strengthened the National Guard, gave them tanks and heavy weapons. The problem was solved. But how do you use a tank to protect thousands of kilometers of railway? How do you stop a railway worker with a Molotov cocktail in Sverdlovsk using a T-72 tank in Moscow? You can't, and Putin knows that. The Freedom of Russia Legion achieved what it promised, making the regime live in fear and forget what security means. For the Kremlin's war machine, nowhere in Russia is safe now, and this is a war that Putin cannot win by force. Now, I want to know your opinion. Do you think these resistance movements inside Russia can really make a difference in the outcome of the war? Post your answer in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, share it with that friend who also follows what's happening in Ukraine. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses on conflicts and geopolitics. See you next time.